Biblical baggage, biblical baggage. Who knew that a wrathful God could be so savage? Unpacking the pages of biblical knowledge, biblical baggage, yeah!
Welcome to Biblical Baggage. I'm Chelsea, and Al is not here today, unfortunately. This started out to be an announcement saying that we were going to take this week off because both of us have been dealing with some crazy stuff and just work and everything. And, podcasting does take a lot of time and we feel stretched pretty thin. So we need to take a break for now, get some things figured out. And then when we come back, we've already discussed some ideas on how to expand the show, what we can add to the show and how to make it better. So stay tuned. There's more to come, and we're super excited about that. Now, while I was thinking about making this announcement about not being able to share anything funny or interesting with you, I was a little upset because, I don't know, it's fun being able to share something with you. And, if you look forward to it, I don't want to rob you of that. So I did stumble upon something kind of interesting that I wanted to tell you guys about that. It's not a story from the Bible. It's actually a story about a Bible, a specific copy of the Bible. So what happened is I heard about this Bible in a podcast I was listening to, and I was like, is this true? So I looked it up and I found it, and it was true. And so I read about it, and then I also found this documentary by National Geographic, and it was pretty, I don't know, it was interesting, but it also kind of reminded me of like the Mermaids documentary on Animal Planet, where it was like, how much of this is actually true and like how much of it is just make-believe. I tried to watch it as unbiasedly as possible, but it's interesting, so I was going to share it with you, and hopefully we can both learn a little. It's about this book, a version of the Bible, a copy of the Bible called the Codex Gigas. Which is Latin for big book, but it's also known as the Devil's Bible. And it's apparently really famous. I didn't know about it, so hopefully I'm not just telling you something you already know, or hopefully if you already know, I can tell you a little bit more. Essentially, it's this huge, physically huge version of the Bible. It's 3 feet tall, and it weighs 165 pounds, and is written it has the whole Bible in it, the whole Christian Bible, which is the Old Testament and the New Testament, and multiple other books, and an encyclopedia, and lots of other things. It has a picture of the devil in it, and it also has, like, air quote, dark rituals of exorcism in it, and it has instructions on how to exorcise demons out of people. So it has this like, scary kind of vibe to it. No one really knows why it was created or why the drawing of Satan is in there, but it is essentially flawless. There's no mistakes in it, and it was written by probably one scribe, and I'll tell you why in a little bit, I guess. So the history that we know, what we know for sure doesn't start from its origin. What we know is that it was probably made at a monastery in Bohemia, which is now the Czech Republic. Aha, I remembered that. I didn't have to Google it. Well, I did Google it, but I remembered before it loaded. Anyway, it was probably written at a monastery in Bohemia by a monk. And after it was written in Bohemia, in the late 13th century, which was decades after the Devil's Bible was written. It's pretty famous, but the monastery that had it went bankrupt, and they had to sell it to another monastery. And the monastery that had it, they were black monks, and they were super strict. Like, they would self-flagellate, and they would punish themselves and, do all these crazy things, like, to purge themselves of sin. So that monastery sold it to this other monastery, which is the white monks, which are, I don't know, I didn't Google them, but I don't know, anyway. So it was moved to a cemetery that was consecrated from dirt from Jesus's crucifixion ground, which is called Golgotha. And so it was like considered, you know, a holy place. And that monastery eventually fell to ruins, and a bishop ordered those monks to return the Codex back to where it came from. And then that town was overtaken by plague and 30,000 people died. Yay! So some time goes on, and eventually this king named King Rudolph ends up with the Devil's Bible. And I guess what happened was he borrowed it from a library, but then never gave it back, and he's obsessed with it or something. And he falls into a depression, and he essentially gets banished from the throne. And then the Swedish army took over where he was, and they ended up taking it back with them. And it was brought to the King of Sweden, who was a woman, but she considered herself the queen, the king, not a queen. She has it for a while, and then she ends up abdicating herself as king of the throne and becomes Catholic. And there's like, I guess, a story saying that after she left, the building caught on fire or whatever, and she left that Bible behind, so a servant threw it out the window, so it survived. But anyway, it's now in the Swedish International Library. It's estimated that to write this whole book, I guess, writing it flawlessly, putting all the art, putting the book together, all of that would have taken 30 years. So this is like the better part of somebody's adult life is dedicated to this as like a job. And they found this out because they did this. They took like a page out of the Serial podcast, and historian who's like specializes in calligraphied one line, and then they did the math, how many lines, blah, blah, blah. And they said that nonstop, just writing it would take 5 years, just writing nonstop. But they account into, everything else, and they say it would have taken probably around 30 years, because it includes more than just the Christian Bible, which is interesting. Right now in the library, it's stored on site with security. It's out of light and out of heat, and people can't, go see it all the time because it's been deteriorating. And actually the pages that have the picture of Satan are the most deteriorated, obviously, because it's the most interesting part, but I kind of thought it was funny. The researchers in this documentary thing basically at the end decided that it was written by one monk, because the ink I guess at that time was either made of metal or out of insect nests, and this type was all insect nest ink. And if it was multiple scribes, you think that they would change ink. Their handwriting was the same, I guess. There's different. This handwriting expert guy came in, and he was saying that the person was probably self-taught. They were an amateur, and it was perfect, but it wasn't anything special. And then they also said that he compared in the handwriting analysis the graphology expert. He was there to see if it was one author, and he said that all of the major markers are uniform, which it looks like it was one author who did this. That's pretty much all the information that you need to know before I tell you this like crazy story that goes along with it. So the story I heard that made me interested in this text, and the story is, I guess, a myth or a legend of how this book was written. So apparently there's this monk, right? And he lives in a monastery in Bohemia, and he is a black monk. But at some point, he shattered some sacred monastic rule, and he was put in prison, and he was eventually sentenced to being walled up alive inside of a room or in a small space, and just stand there or whatever till you die, walled up inside, this monk is freaking out because, he broke this rule so sacred that he got this terrible punishment. He's going to be walled up alive, and that's a terrible way to die. That's, worst nightmare. Sorry about that noise I made. So he says that he'll inscribe a huge holy book that will have all the information of their age in it. And he'll write it in one night, and it will be perfect. Essentially, and the guards say, okay, if you can do that, then we will see that, you're with God, or I don't know, whatever. You're good. You're golden. You're free. So he starts this process, and he gets to midnight, and he says there's too much left to do. So God isn't answering him. He's trying to get this done for, to be good, but God isn't answering him. So instead, he asks Satan. He makes a pact with Satan to get it completed. The next day, the guards came back or the monks, other monks, whatever, came back, the monk guards. Is it like a monk? You can have your job as being a guard, and that's like, but you're still a monk, or is it like, anyway. I don't know much about monks, if you couldn't tell. So he makes this pact with Satan, and the next day, the monks come down to check on him. It's completed in full, and it has that creepy ass devil's face on it. The rumor is that he prayed to Satan, sold his soul to Satan to complete this so that he could live and not be walled up alive. And now there's this like weird book out there that was created with Satan's help. Everybody who has it has had something bad happen to them, in theory. One monastery collapses, another one gets the plague, and then, this king, he goes into a depression and quits, and then this woman king gets it, and then, I don't know, I guess she just becomes Catholic. I guess it could be worse. But then, I don't know, I just thought it was interesting. Anyway, thought I'd share that with you guys. If you're interested, I'm going to include the link to the documentary in the show notes, or however you're watching it, in the notes of wherever you're looking, or go to our website and find it. It'll be there. Anyway, I hope you all are having a wonderful life. That was weird. I was going to say I hope you're having a good weekend, but this is coming out on Monday. So anyway, just ignore me. I'm rambling. Peace out, Girl Scout. I hope you all have a great week. We'll be back in 2 weeks. Bye.